You think you know Godzilla? Well, here's some things you may not have known about the American Godzilla film. The good one, not the Roland Emmerich one.
It affects everything electrical for miles and miles, and it is happening again. This is what caused everything in the first place. Don't you see that? And it is going to send us back to the Stone Age.
Godzilla was directed by Gareth Edwards. It's the 30th entry in the Godzilla franchise, but only the second Godzilla film to be produced entirely by an American studio, and is the first installment of Legacy's Godzilla film series. With a budget of $160 million, 75% of that coming from Legendary and 25% from Warner Brothers, the film went on to make over $529 million. After Godzilla Final Wars was released in 2004 on the 50th anniversary of the franchise, it was announced that they would no longer be producing any more films featuring Godzilla for at least 10 years. Toho went as far as to actually demolish the water stage used to film the water scenes in Godzilla movies. Additionally, TriStar Pictures, the producers of the 1998 Godzilla film, let their rights to make a trilogy lapse in 2003. When Toho licensed Godzilla to Legendary, two stipulations were imposed on the agreement, the first being that the film be set in Japan, and the second being that Godzilla be born through nuclear technology.
Put the safety doors on manual override.
No, I cannot do that. Keep the doors open. My wife is still in there.
Army technical officers lended their knowledge to help add an air of authenticity to the military presence in the movie. The Army was more than happy to help advise Legendary and Warner Brothers, hoping that the American public watching would learn something about how their military truly functions. Quote, "Some of the people who will be watching Godzilla aren't watching the evening news or keeping up with news about troops in Afghanistan, but they may learn about the Army from watching this or any other movie or TV show that we supported or provided guidance for," said advisor Lieutenant Colonel Stephen R. Cole. Many of the personnel, equipment, and sound effects were lent and provided by the U.S. Army.
Get you back to your mom and dad, okay? Yeah, is this what you want? Take good care of him for me. I better not miss my flight, kid.
Scriptwriter David Callahan wrote the first draft of Godzilla after thoroughly researching the history of Godzilla, animal documentaries, natural disasters, and how local governments prepare for disasters. He wanted to depict what was accurately possible and what would transpire if there ever was a giant reptilian to emerge from the sea. Callahan said of the script, quote, "Godzilla is pretty cut and dry, giant monster that smashes stuff. But the reason I got excited about it was because I saw themes and relationships to the modern world that I could tell in this story, and that was important." Frank Darabont was brought in to revise and edit the script, adding more emotional depth to the human characters in the film. Apparently, it was one of these emotive scenes that convinced Bryan Cranston and Juliette Binoche to accept the roles in the film.
I don't want to hear this.
I know. I know you don't. But you can't keep running away. And son, you can't bury this in the past.
In 2013, Edwards confirmed that Godzilla's capacity in the film was neither that of a villain or a hero. It was wholly intended that Godzilla embodies an unstoppable force of nature. Expanding on this, Edwards states, quote, "Godzilla is definitely a representation of the wrath of nature. We've taken it very seriously, and the theme is man versus nature, and Godzilla is certainly the nature side of it. You can't win that fight. Nature is always going to win, and that's what the subtext of our movie is about. He's the punishment we deserve." In order to create a seemingly otherworldly roar for Godzilla that was still rooted in real-world noises, sound engineers Ethan Van der Ren and Eric Adal used a scientific microphone that allowed the capture of sounds outside the threshold of human hearing. The sounds were then pitched down so they could be heard and further altered to create the roar heard in the film. According to Van der Ren in an interview with NPR, this allowed them to, quote, "exploit the vast universe of sound that really people have never heard before." They did, however, try to keep the same style and cadence of the original Godzilla roar instead of inventing an entirely new roar. In creating Godzilla's face, designers incorporated elements of dogs, eagles, and bears to make for more of a believable monster. Andy Serkis was brought on to consult and help advise the motion capture for Godzilla's movements. Films like Alien, Starship Troopers, and Jurassic Park were studied to figure out what made their creature design so lasting and iconic. What was gleaned from these studios was then applied to both Godzilla and the various Mutos in the film. And here's a bonus one. Edwards wanted to take a very restrained approach to making Godzilla. He cites his inspiration from watching Steven Spielberg growing up. Quote, "I grew up watching Spielberg movies. What they did so well, they made the characters feel real and human. We were trying to do the same thing here. As such, Edwards arguably achieved the universal appeal he was going for." That's it for this episode of You Think You Know Movies. Make sure to subscribe, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and get the latest movie and TV news on ScreenCrush.com.